Welcome, welcome, welcome again. My name is Lisa Kerbiel. I am proud to be part of the UN's Joint SDG Fund. And many of you are strong partners and advocates for SDG acceleration, have joined us today. Some of you were unable to join us today, and so we'll be sharing this with you via recording. So hope you're able to do this while multitasking on other things. Today's goal is really just to give you an update on all of the incredible work led by the UN Development System with the Food Systems Hub from Rome in the lead, right? So much of this, as you know, effort of the Joint SDG Fund is also to ensure that we align and we bring the best of what the UN has to offer to governments to really accelerate and transform food systems. So my role is for opening remarks. I don't have any slides for that. I instead wanted to let you know some of the reflections on the fund as we enter the brave new world of 2025. And a part of that is to underline that the fund will be seeking to put the financing before and around every one of the transitions that the fund seeks to work in, right? So it's no accident that the title slide here is financing food systems. Everything we do going forward will have to have the financing element centralized to ensure that we have the sustainability, both fiscally but also environmentally, to take our arenas forward. And a big part of that is also local financing. Stefanos and I and members of the Local 2030 Coalition had the privilege to join a retreat in Bilbao, Spain, where the idea of fiscal space at city, at provincial, at local level is a whole untapped resource. And perhaps more and more of the policies and the systems that we try to build out for food systems can have more of a landing or an entry point at that level. So that is something that the fund has taken to heart. I think you all recall that we have a localization marker in the fund, in addition to the markers that ensure gender empowerment and gender mainstreaming. This is another piece of how we hope to unfold 2025 as we see ODA shrinking, and yet we see the demand for impact growing. So with that, colleagues, I'm going to kindly and thankfully pass over to Stefanos with a sincere appreciation because he's joining us from Thailand. So it's very, very late there now. And I really want to acknowledge, Stefanos, you and all of the work of OFALI, colleagues within FAO, WFP, IFA, UNEP, DCO, the wider hub that really makes all this work possible. The fund is merely the fuel in the engines of these agencies, colleagues. So our success is really the success of their leadership. So with that, Stefanos, I hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Lisa, thank you very much. And indeed, it's late where I am, but it's never late when it comes to pushing for more resources for financing food systems transformation. So a little bit from my side with three things. So one is, let me start with three numbers. Number one, what is the cost, the economic, social, and environmental cost of unsustainable food systems? About $12 trillion. $12 trillion. That's something that it has come up both as a study of FAO 2023, but it confirms also a number that was estimated back in 2021 on the UN Food Systems Summit, 12 trillion. There are a lot of studies also about what is the value that we need to invest, and I'm not going to call it a cost. It's the value that we need to invest to make the food systems more sustainable. It's about 400 billion per year. Compare this, it's 1 to 30. It's every $1 that we invest, we get 30 back. And finally, another figure, what is the value, the volume of agricultural subsidies that they produce, no public good? About 500 to 700 billion. So more than what we need to make the food systems more sustainable. So if we do invest this money in the transformation on food systems to make them sustainable, we will boost productivity, we'll protect the environment, we will have resource use, and unlock about 4.5 trillion in business opportunities every year. So how this could be done? There are 5 ways that we can cover this need. So one, and a very big thing, is repurposing the subsidies. So redirecting subsidies towards sustainable food systems through integrated policies. And a report back from 2021 from the London Food Coalition and the World Bank, they do say that we need to repurpose and redirect at least half of these subsidies. The second is to unlock private investment. Here, it's about two things, I would say. One is to mobilize the private capital through innovative financial products. But a second, for me, very important, is the repurposing of the portfolios, the repurpose of the equity that it's already in the food sector. The third is, of course, to scale climate finance and make it more linked to the agri-food systems agenda. The fourth, to really focus investments on social protection for resilience, because the social cost of unsustainable food systems is very big. And last but not least, align bilateral and multilateral financing with country priorities. Now, do we have any proof that if we put more money, things could happen in a better way? I think we have a lot of proof from the work we are doing in around 20 countries right now. 18 countries that they have received funding from the Joint SDG Fund, from the food system window, 12 as a startup fund and 6 as a high impact countries, and an additional 10 countries that we have from other projects that we're supporting in the hub, that we do what we said. We try to link, for example, the climate change agenda and the food systems agenda. And we see in these countries a very big response in terms of policy development, in terms of the way that they are designing new investments, and even an investment of $2 million in this country, it really creates a very, very big leverage. So everywhere we go, in all countries, they do appreciate very much this funding, that it's really tagged as a funding for food systems transformation, either coming from the SDG Fund or as I said, from some additional project. But because for the food systems, we have a specific audience. We have in each country our focal points, the food system national conveners, that they are the ones that they are hands-on on the food system transformation. They really make the best use of this money. They create a lot of leverage. And at the end, I think that they can really contribute to the achievement of the SDGs through the food systems transformation. So a lot of things to be done. We do have as our guiding principle and our guiding and our beacon the call to action of the UN Secretary General from the first stock taking moment, that has given us a direction of travel, and he has called for the UN system to work closely with financial institutions, donors, national banks, multilateral banks to accelerate the transformation in over 150 countries. And he has also called for a strong donor support to the Joint SDG food system window. So many thanks, and looking forward to the discussion today. Over to you, Lisa.
Stefanos, thank you so much. Delighted to really be reminded of the tremendous resources that are lost and can be recovered and amplified and multiplied with the right investments into food systems. So really well said. And again, appreciation to all of your leadership in this area. I'm now delighted to hand over to Ned and Ophelie, who are going to walk us through some of the details that are included in this deck and beyond. So over to Ned and Ophelie. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Just to check, can you see the slide?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So as always, we've been working very closely with the hub. So Ophelie and I are gonna kind of intertwine. So some of that will be presented by me, some other by Ophelie, and then back and forth. So this is the way how we do everything in collaboration with the Joint with the Food Systems Coordination Hub and the Joint SDG Fund. Okay, so very briefly. So we're going to just give you an update on the fund overall, and then focus on the food systems, going from the broader context of the global agenda, and then the overview of what we did in 2004 with some strategic outlook for 2005 and onwards. Now, this is just as a reminder. This is, of course, you've seen it many times, I believe. This is basically the ID card. This is the essence of the strategy of the Joint SDG Fund. You can see that, as Lisa mentioned, we will continue supporting all 6 SDG transitions, but food systems is definitely on the top. On this slide, as in reality. But also to emphasize that since we started supporting this through different funding rounds and funding tracks, we've always avoided the tendency to silo these transitions. So when we have food systems joint program, it always relates to at least another transition properly integrated, properly interwoven into the food system. So you will see that we have food systems that focus also on digitalization or jobs and so on and so forth, and vice versa. When we designed last year joint programs on, for instance, digital, we have a number of those that have strong food systems component, like in Tanzania or Chile or Albania, a few other countries. So we are really approaching each of these transitions as systems, as complex systems by themselves, but also in relation to all the other transitions seen as systems. And just a reminder in terms of the enabling actions, these are the mechanisms, just to demystify it, mechanisms by which we try to influence policy and financing at the country level, whether it's through capacity building at scale, shifts in policy and regulatory frameworks, the deal room, which is the blended finance or financing mix, as sometimes referred to, and of course, increasingly developing the pipeline of market-ready and bankable projects. Our definition of transformation requires, of course, integration. This is the way how SDGs were understood from the beginning and needs to be addressed. So, as I mentioned, working on food systems also means working on other SDG transitions. We definitely go to much larger scale, including on financing. And these new joint programs are specific in terms of having this ambition to deliver impact outcome level results within the 2 years. Typically, joint programs incubate certain solutions, maybe deliver some intermediary results, but the impact was expected after. So it was incubated, catalyzed for after the joint program. Now we are bringing everything into the 2-year time frame, hoping that this also enables speed. So the joint programs will be having first results within 9 months, and within 2 years they will be having outcome level impact on policy and financing. Now, in terms of the massive work that the Joint SDG Fund has done in the last year, we've launched 7 different funding rounds and funding tracks around the SDG transitions. So you have some, you of course have the map that shows the footprint, global footprint, but just in terms of some of the numbers, 136 joint programs have been designed and developed and launched last year. Out of 136, 25 are so-called high-impact joint programs, which are the ones that I just referred to in terms of being with a higher level of ambition, accelerated at scale, and then the rest are seed funding joint programs. We consider that this will be prudent to try to seed, literally seed, a number of innovative processes in a large number of countries, giving them the opportunity to come back to us within a very short period of time of 12 months and actually offer solutions and proposals and the pipeline for much larger investments. The investment from our end was $87 million, but in addition to that, in co-funding from the agencies and governments, we received $62 million. So you can see that there is a large co-funding, which also demonstrates the commitment from governments and UN agencies at the country level to really see this more elevated ambition become a reality. Almost half of those funds went to the LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS, and we will be over the next 2-3 years committing and transferring the total of 100.4 million. So it's a bit more than what you see in 2024 because a couple of these are being wrapped in January, February this year. Now, just as a quick reminder also, the Joint SDG Fund has become a bit, I shouldn't say famous, but kind of a comparative advantage of the way we do things since the beginning was that we have very robust way of engaging in a participatory co-design process. So everything that I just presented on a previous slide have been developed jointly with governments, genuinely. And there's full co-ownership. And then also the governments are working with us as a co-implementers of all these joint programs. that requires a number of steps that leads to this kind of a solid, strong foundation for effective partnerships, including making sure that the joint programs have highest quality, that we still continue to do this independent technical review where external experts independently review and comment and guide the finalization of these joint programs. And then, of course, we are very rapid and very efficient in terms of launching these joint programs and making sure that within a week or so, joint program teams are set up and start with the activities. So last year, this has happened, as I mentioned, across 7 different streams of funding. And on food systems, we really appreciate all the support that the Food Systems Coordination Hub has provided for all the funding round on food systems, but also supporting us cross-fertilized food systems in other funding rounds. I will now pass on to Ophélie to give us a bit of a bigger picture before we actually get to the specific joint programs we would like to present and update you with. Over to you, Ophélie.
Thank you, Ned. So, Ned, you've already presented a number of arguments why the collaboration between the Joint SDG Fund and the Food Systems Coordination Hub was such a natural partnership in terms of the country leadership, in terms of the systems approach, the holistic approach across key SDG transitions. So this is really the narrative that has been crafted as far as food is concerned since 2021 by the Food Systems Summit. A narrative and a momentum that was not only sustained, but even amplified 2 years later in 2023 with the first stocktake that took place in Rome. And we're now moving towards the next one, and we can go back to this a bit later, which will take place in Addis in July this year. But basically, what came out of the summit in terms of more than 120 national food system pathways, a few were finalized after the summit. In terms of a very robust network of national conveners, government focal points that have been designed to really lead and steer the coordination across sectoral ministries for a truly systemic approach around food, and really move from a vision with a national development, with the national food system pathways to implementation, to action, to coordination of interventions, of partners. So this is another one of the very solid outcomes that we've inherited, the summit legacy. And lastly, 27 coalitions of action that really focus on key entry points in terms of thematic entry points for the food systems, and that really regroup the ecosystem of support from the UN to the private sector, to donors, to civil society, around the dedication to work in a more coordinated way to fight the fragmentation, the current fragmentation, and really align resources, comparative advantages to the visions of governments. So this is really what came out of the summit. This is what the assets that we were leveraging in all our work on food systems ever since 2021. And this is also why it was so natural for us to be working together. In addition to the fact that when we transitioned after the summit, we organized a survey and assessment of country needs, country priorities, and one of the first priorities that came out from national conveners themselves was really the request for a global level instrument, financial instrument that could support their efforts in moving those food system transformation visions into action. So there it is, the really guiding principles in terms of this holistic systems approach. As Ned said, yes, we are working on food systems, but there's not a single joint program as part of this window that doesn't also tick boxes in terms of environmental progress, sustainability, in terms of the livelihood, social dimension, education, digital. All of these are integrated and embedded in joint programs, and it's really a truly systems approach that is taken by countries. There's also the fact that it is absolutely truly government-led and government-driven. It is aligned to national pathways. There is the buy-in of national conveners, and this is absolutely important. This is something that we insist on. And lastly, it's really also looking at leveraging. We know that there's a very rich ecosystem of support in most countries, but they tend to work in a uncoordinated way. Sometimes it may also stretch the government capacities, and this is what the joint programs are looking at as well, leveraging this ecosystem of support in a cost-effective way. Next slide. So yes, as we were saying, it's really this food systems approach where there's not a single joint program that, or there's not a single intervention that is not designed with simultaneous consideration for the people aspects, the social aspects, the health, nutrition, the prosperity, all of the economic markets, but also livelihoods, youth, women aspects, and the environmental aspects in terms of planet. So this is why we always say people, planet, and prosperity. This is the way that joint programs are designed. The overall objectives are drawn from the investment strategy that the Hub incubated 2 years ago together with the Joint SDG Fund Secretariat. 4 overall overarching objectives that really accompany all of the different funding rounds. One being promoting the narrative and advocating around the power of food systems to deliver progress across all SDGs. Food systems is one of the most effective SDG transitions, key transitions. The other one is really power the government-driven transitions, so the very concrete actions, interventions, but still ensuring an all of government, all of society, rights-based approach, so an inclusive approach. The third objective being really at the same time reforming the national food finance architecture. Stefano spoke in his introduction in terms of the hidden costs of unsustainable food systems, the fact that there were major flows that needed to be repurposed if we want to move towards sustainable food systems, including private sector investments, but also the way that the funding is done, currently development funding. And this is what the programs are aiming for simultaneously. And lastly, really contributing in that process to transferring capacities to the national level. So through building national, regional, and global knowledge, peer-to-peer and learning. Next slide, and I believe it's over to you again, Nad.
Yes, thank you very much. So, colleagues, you can see here a snapshot of specific funding for food systems. Again, the funding that is dedicated to the food systems window or food systems funding round, we do have food systems represented in other joint programs. And in the future, we're probably referring to a larger number because we're going to really identify which of the other joint programs, like, as I mentioned, Digital in Tanzania or in Chile, has actually very strong focus on food systems, and we may actually bring it into a larger portfolio of food systems, regardless of where the funding actually came from. But specifically for the food systems funding round, and specifically for the last year, we have developed and launched 6 high impact. So the high impact are those that receive $2 million over 24 months, and which are expected to deliver financing and policy reforms at scale, including specific change of lives and livelihoods of people, the outcome level impact within those 2 years. So when you see some of the direct beneficiaries numbers like 8 million on the right-hand side, this is direct. This is within 2 years. This is not the total number. The total number will be multiple of that number of 8 in terms of what will be incubated and catalyzed within those 2 years. Since we are elevating the ambition and saying that the joint program itself has to immediately start producing direct benefits, we will actually be focusing on this 8 million. But at the same time, if you look into our previous portfolios, the number will probably be 10 to 15 times more in terms of what will be developed within the joint program and then taken over by the government to scale and further catalyze. So the high impact are those that will be focusing on this immediate impact, and they are mostly the ones that will be helping leverage additional resources. And you can see the number of plus $100 million. This is currently anticipated, but we expect much more. You can also see that some of these joint programs will develop a pipeline, which is really something we are excited about. This is not typical for the UN joint programs to get into the pipeline development. This is the pipeline of investment projects that could be immediately taken over by the private sector, by IFIs, and so they are bankable, investable projects. In this whole the kind of scope of the beneficiaries, it's very important to emphasize that one specific group comes out very strongly, which are the smallholder farmers. And this is also very interesting because it's not just one of many different, what we call them, beneficiary groups, is really an ecosystem in itself. So the whole smallholder farmers are very closely related to trade, to broader household livelihoods. It's not really just supporting one or two. It's business development. And then it's also localization of the SDGs. So many of these joint programs actually are operating at the local level, meaning they're the closest possible to citizens, not necessarily central national level. So these high impact, 6 of those include Bolivia, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Somalia, Tajikistan, Timor-Leste. But in addition to those, as I mentioned, we are seeding innovation, incubation of transformative solutions in other countries, and we have 12. They received 200,000 for very short period of time of 12 months. And these are Cambodia, Costa Rica, Egypt, El Salvador, Jordan, Kenya, Rwanda, Samoa, Serbia, Tanzania, and then Vietnam, Uganda and Vietnam. And all of these countries were identified as on the basis of what Ophélie just presented, which is the global agenda being landed and customized and localized in different countries. So these countries proved, demonstrated, and not the UN, but the governments demonstrated the highest degree of readiness for either high impact or seed funding based on the situation with regard to their capacities, to the commitment to the national food systems pathways, and the orientation of the national conveners to co-design and work on something of this sort with the UN. There's a number of countries that got to that stage in the meantime, and we hope to continue providing this kind of funding this year. Of notice is also to mention that over 40 policies and different policy tools and instruments will be developed, implemented, or transformed, many of which actually in terms of the enabling environment for the investments. You can see there the spread, geographic spread. We are very happy that most of these joint programs are in Africa. And of course, there was, just to mention another thing that I think we missed to say, that the food systems, of course, being a system approach, also addresses food security or food insecurity, depends how you approach it. So a number of these joint programs do represent a nexus between development and humanitarian assistance, especially in countries like Somalia. You can see here in terms of the cross-fertilization between food systems and other transitions, education, digital, you see that there's so much on climate and then also job creation. I'm going to move further, but this is probably one of the densest slides that we have today. Hopefully, I managed to present it in efficient manner. This is just a reiteration of the previous one with an update. So all of the joint programs except Nigeria and Tajikistan, Nigeria and Tajikistan, exactly. Well, in the meantime, we also Timor-Leste and another one was launched. But this is the map. So you can see the spread of the high impact and seed funding joint programs. Of note for this kind of update is that the seed funding joint programs will have finished mid this year. So we will be having their final reports. We will be able to provide a comprehensive picture on how much they succeeded and what kinds of joint programs, future joint programs they incubated, and pipeline of investable projects that they prepared sometime by August, September this year. At the same time, high impact joint programs have their first milestone of 9 months. So within 9 months, they need to demonstrate the first results. So basically also around August, September, maybe early October, we'll have a very comprehensive picture in terms of what the hits will have produced in this very short period of time. In the meantime, with the hub, we are providing continuous support, including regular bilateral sessions with the country teams, with the joint program partners. We are also supporting the kind of increasing the engagement with the broader ecosystem. Food Systems Hub has an amazing database of all different kind of organizations involved in each country. So we will be working with the joint program teams very closely throughout this process maybe more than we did in the past, because not only because it's very rapid, every day, every week matters, but also because we want to make sure that we provide any assistance we can so that they stay on track and do come to the finish line as expected. I'm going to go back to Ophélie for the next slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Ned. And I'll try to go fast to leave enough time for the discussion. But we did want to give, some tangible examples of what those principles that we're talking about in terms of, yes, this food systems transformations are happening in countries. And it's really going from paper, from the national pathways to concrete action and results that we're already starting to see. So in terms of concrete examples, maybe around, how the joint programs are contributing to strengthening national leadership and are fully aligned with country priorities. The way that joint programs were designed are really to have the buy-in, not only the buy-in, they're signed off by national conveners, and they've been developed in complement to national pathways, very often building on implementation plans of the national pathways or action plans, and really having, after a strategic discussion on what are the priority actions that require catalytic funding. So what are the best priorities that would match the objective of the Joint SDG Fund, and how could we best leverage the joint programs? So for instance, Cambodia, in terms of seed funding, is currently updating its national pathways. We know that a lot has happened in the last 3 years, especially at the global level in terms of converging narratives, climate, food, etc. And it does call for an update of a number of pathways as countries have been experiencing. So this is what part of the funding is used for in Cambodia, and it really goes to see how tightly or narrowly tied it is with the policies. In Tanzania, it's pretty much the other way around. The pathway was updated and it was used to inform the development of the joint program. In Somalia, for instance, the joint program is used also for advocacy. Right now, there's a whole effort of redeveloping a national development plan. And there's a lot of advocacy going on in terms of the importance of food for Somalia in the context of its overall development vision. So those are examples. We can share a little bit more in terms of Nigeria, its implementation plan. There are 78 priority actions and how that discussion went. Same thing with Timor-Leste. We see that the joint program is really the same vision as the national pathway, same entry point, the echoing theory of change, so really closely linked. Same with Samoa, for instance, in terms of really responding to some of the 14 priorities. There's also big importance of those joint programs in terms of strengthening the governance. We know that governance is really key when it comes to being catalytic, when it comes to scaling up, scaling out. For any support to become systemic, it needs to go through reinforcing, strengthening national own governance. And there's not a single joint program that doesn't do this. It takes different forms, as Ned was saying. It's owned by countries, so it has a different flavor every time. But it goes towards strengthening national, multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral platforms, government platforms, with a lot of participation. And Ned was mentioning smallholder beneficiaries in one of the previous slides. I would even argue, Ned, that the work with smallholder associations, networks, goes beyond considering them beneficiaries, but really strengthening their agency as important national actors of their national food system transformation vision. And we're seeing this in a number of joint programs as well, where there's a very intentional link with smallholder associations. So examples, and we can go on these a little bit more in detail. There's also a lot that is being done in terms of decentralizing food system governance. We see this, for instance, in Nigeria, in the 6 geographical zones. And this is really taking a very interesting shape with a very strong notion of accountability. They've been very active this year in preparing for the stocktake, for instance, reviewing progress at a decentralized level. It's also the focus of the joint program in Ethiopia, really establishing those Ethiopia food system governance bodies at the regional level. And then lastly, in terms of national leadership, what is interesting is to see how the joint programs are used to strengthen and equip the governments in their role as service providers. and not replace this role. So really equip them in terms of sustainability. And we see this, for instance, on social protection, and we can go a bit more in details afterwards, but we see this with Bolivia or Somalia, where safety nets are really used as the entry point to support production, smallholders, but also all of the climate smart and environmental aspects. So those are examples about how every single intervention and joint program really has this people, planet, and prosperity lens to it. But as Ned was saying, and Lisa earlier, a very big aspect of this is really the unlocking business opportunities that speaks to the sustainability of these joint programs. And this is where all of the work to engage farmer associations, to engage cooperatives, the private sector is also very important. And in joint programs, we see different efforts, very interesting, in terms of establishing partnership platforms, in terms of assessment, in terms of analysis, developing bankable projects that Ned was referring to earlier in terms of the pipeline. A lot is being done, strengthening the public-private partnerships. We see this, for instance, in Rwanda, working on financial literacy, market and tech access, digital, or business-to-business opportunities in the circular economy. So next slide.
Ophélie, yes,
Yeah.
next slide. And then after this one, there's another one, but I would not go into the examples. So colleagues, we will share this deck, and even more importantly, we are going to share the very detailed document with overview of all these joint programs. So you will have full information. So Ophélie, let's focus on this one, and then two more, and then we'll stop for the discussion. Thank you.
Perfect. So, I mean, these slides very quickly, we wanted to illustrate the intention and how we're working with the countries in the context of the joint programs to really move from co-funding, and Ned has spoken to the strong buy-in from partner UN agencies and countries. There's a lot of co-funding matching the initial investment of the Joint SDG Fund. But beyond co-funding, really this sense of leveraging financing, looking around broader, further, and longer term as well. So these figures are very preliminary, but you can see, the ratio in terms of the original sum that is injected by the Joint SDG Fund, matched by the partner UN agencies in the country, and in some countries matched with a lot of either domestic spending funding in terms of private sector money that has been identified very interestingly, or international donors and beyond IFIs. And I just want to here put a disclaimer, especially as far as the high impact joint programs are concerned. This is only the beginning. Those are high impact programs on 2 years, and we'll be working with countries to help them identify more specifically and more broadly. And this is what we're doing right now in terms of really partnering with IFIs, with multilateral development banks, global, regional, to try to make these links. So maybe last slide, Ned. And this speaks to my previous point about really the financial sustainability of it. The idea to move from funding to, financing, but also showing how the effort that's done in terms of leveraging what is already there and better coordinating. So the first one is really how the different bilateral donors that are present in the countries that have a joint program have or are being leveraged in different countries. So this is building on bilateral agreements, different programs, and making the best of it, really catalyzing everything we can out of these. So making as many links as possible, and then really moving incrementally to partnerships. So those are the IFIs or other funding mechanisms that have been identified currently through the joint programs. But there's a lot more that is expected to come, for instance, in terms of the Asian Development Bank. I mean, here we have the World Bank, the African Development Bank. There's a lot more that will be coming, but it's already interesting to see how we're moving from one to the other in terms of longer term perspectives, and this idea of graduating out and really being more autonomous in terms of fundraising, in terms of agreements, and bigger scale investments as well. Over, Ned. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ophélie. And Lisa, I suggest we go back to the discussion. Hoping that this was informative. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ophélie and Ned. Indeed, very informative and well done. And colleagues, now the floor is open. I want to give a special appreciation to our colleagues representing the European Union, Ireland, Luxembourg, Poland, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland. So sincerely want to appreciate and flag that the work on food systems that the fund is launching now is only a part of the journey that you've been on with us since the beginning of the fund in 2019. And as you saw references to social protection, to national policies, to leapfrogging ahead with national ownership, this is something that is emblematic of the UN development system at large, and certainly the fund in this specific context. So just want to appreciate that this work is building the Lego blocks of how UN resident coordinators, the UN country teams with government hand in hand are building this out. I also want to appreciate Canada, who I also see now on the line, and anyone I may have missed. So colleagues, the floor is open for questions, reactions. We're really keen to be challenged by you. We're looking for your demands for more detail. And as the colleagues pointed out, all of this will be shared immediately following the meeting. Isabella, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. That was very, very helpful. Just a couple of questions to challenge maybe some of the figures you have there, or to ask maybe for more details. You mentioned in one of the slides the expectation to raise 100 million more. And what is that based on? And is that relating to the commitment to the fund overall, or to the window, or does it relate to the funds that you expect to leverage at country level, or maybe both? That's one question. And my second question is, one of the slides mentions 40 policies will be addressed or developed, and again, this estimate, is it based on policy processes that you have already identified in different countries, or is it an expectation based maybe on other pieces? I'm particularly interested in with regards to the funding and the leveraging at country level. You mentioned the 68 million that has been part of the co-funding, which is really, really good. So would you have what's the percentage of that is leveraged by the food systems window joint programs? And if you don't have it today, it's okay, for another time. But thanks so much. That's really helpful.
Excellent, Isabella. Excellent. I think Stefanos, if you'd like to perhaps react to the $100 million target, because I know many of the funding targets have been part of the global conversation around food systems from the stocktake. And then, of course, in terms of some examples, perhaps, of the policies that were referenced on the slide, I could pass to Ned and Ophelie. But maybe first to Stefanos.
I think, Lisa, that the 100 target was something that came out of the second stock taking moment, and at that moment that we were talking about the billion envelope for the fund. If I see where we're standing today with the funding rounds, we are far away. I think we are less than 1/3 of this target, and we will need to push. I think that it could be achievable, especially if we see that we do have a good follow-up from the countries. But we need at least 3 or 3.5 times the money that we say we can have right now. Over from me.
Great, Stefanos. Thank you. And Ned, would you like to just give maybe 1 or 2 examples of some policy interventions that are being showcased?
So, the answer to all 3 questions, Isabella, is that this really relates to these specific joint programs. So the 100 million is what the joint programs at the country level commit to leverage within the next 2 years. 65 is already what was provided for by the government and UN agencies as co-funding. And then the number of policies, we have very detailed results frameworks where the financial and policy targets are included. So this is the actual number of policies or policy instruments, policy solutions that these primarily six high impact joint programs commit to have, to deliver or to change or reform or to implement within the 2 years. So all the numbers are only for these specific joint programs. And I should also emphasize that this is really from the 6 hits. So the $100 million in financial leverage, 65 in co-funding, and the number of policies really relates to only 6 countries. So this demonstrates that, there's really a huge added value and basic kind of a return on investment, because these 6 countries, we provide $12 million. So the cost of all of that at our back end and your end is really $12 million. So if Stefano was referring to a larger figure, if he could multiply this couple of times, he would definitely be able to reach the global target on financial leverage.
And Ned, would you be able to just extract 1 or 2 examples? We talk about policies, and sometimes I think we throw that word around, but we don't understand what it means. Could you give me 1 or 2 examples of your favorites and how that policy is also, transformative at country level?
Yes. So, Ophelia, would you please come in and then maybe connect the policy with something that is part of the global agenda, just to make sure that we have this link as well, but also, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the first example that comes to mind I was referring to is for instance, how Cambodia is updating its national pathway to really take into account that convergence with the climate transition. So really have objectives that speak to each other, that are coherent in between sectors, and really, yes, I mean, come up with this very holistic vision for food, and how the food system transition will also contribute to other targets.
Excellent. Excellent.
So just maybe,
and I think
Lisa,
we have those.
For the heads up, we will be sharing this document, colleagues, and then at the very end of the document, you will see very detailed information on every single joint program, where you can see all the numbers, you can see all the policies, all the results. So full information will be provided soon after this meeting.
Brilliant. Excellent. Wonderful. Isabella, great questions as always. Ireland is a thought partner always, and we really appreciate that. As others are thinking of their questions, I came up with a wish list of what I would love to ask my beloved member state partners. Has your ambassador at country level met with the resident coordinator and talked about food systems? Has your head of cooperation met with the UNCT at technical level and maybe challenged how this is unfolding? Do you have a food systems thematic focal point at Capitol? And are they on this call? And if not, could we share this recording with them? And are there any other focal points, to Ophelia's point, around climate finance, around the integration of other points at Capitol level that have touch points with food systems, right? The risk of siloing is for all of us, right, colleagues? So how do we try to make sure that the climate finance team, the food systems team, the resilience team, the social protection team are also aware of this work, because we're trying to be cross-sectoral at country level? What about your private sector focal point, both at country level and at Capitol level? Are you looking at how your multinationals are looking to expand into emerging markets? And what opportunities might there be in the food system space? We know that a big part of the stock take in Addis is going to be around a deal room, right? We want to be fostering that. That's part of the UN's role as broker and convener. And then finally, what about your development bank? Colleagues, many of you on the line have big players in this space, which is the final slide that was shared. Going from funding to financing means we have to be looking at all the guarantees and all of the loan opportunities that could really open up, bless you, Isabella, that could really open this up at a broader level. And then to our Luxembourg colleagues, goodness, we have a stock exchange on the line. When are we going to start having the kind of interventions that can be investable, right? That's a big part of the engine rooms that we as the UN are trying to build to really ensure that we don't keep coming back to you, but that the leverage is maintained. So that's the wish list I came up with. Over to you. So I'd love reactions to that. We would love to do this again for a different set of colleagues that would be more targeted to their agenda. If you had private sector chambers of commerce, we love to set up visits to go visit those UNCTs and visit those RCs in some of these countries, maybe for your regional colleagues, if you have regional setups, et cetera. So let's use 2025 to showcase, colleagues. There's a lot of amazing work going on right now. And we'd love to get more attention on that great work through and with you. I'm just looking for a hand. So this is me filling the silence. So really eager or hopeful for anyone else who'd like to react. Okay. If there are no further questions, colleagues, oh, Isabella, please come on back. Please, thank you.
Just wanted to react so that you didn't think that we were not. I'm sure everybody on the call is feeling very positively about what you just asked. Just to say that, yes, we have been in touch. In our case, our embassies have been in touch with the resident coordinators and have linked up on the joint initiatives. We asked colleagues in the window to receive the joint programs, which were shared with us. We shared with the embassies, and the embassies engaged with the resident coordinators, who were very open to the communication, and that was great. We have, yes, different leads in head office, and bringing everybody together for different initiatives is always the ambition, to make sure we're not working in silos with the challenges that I'm sure you can imagine. But I think we can certainly share the recording and maybe this type of conversation with other thematic leads. The food systems will be myself. And then in terms of the financing piece and the leverage, and I think looking at cases that are investable, I think this is something that we can all look at with a bit of a different head, particularly given the circumstances we're all in at the moment, and the changes, sort of geopolitical financing and whatnot, that are happening in the recent times. So I think that is a priority a little bit for everyone, sort of looking at the financing space and how can each of us play a role within our different capacities.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Stefanos, would you like to come in with any final reflections as we're going into sort of our final round of interventions? You're most welcome.
Lisa, I think you have put a multiple of questions there. And for me, something I want to highlight for the food system window is this network of the national conveners we have at the country level. And if we see all the transitions, I think that when it comes to the food systems, we have an architecture that it starts from the UNFSS follow-up, we have the coordination hub, we have the window. But the most important thing for us is this network of 155 national conveners. And we have seen that these are the ones that they keep the baton of the food system transformations, they pass it to each other. I want to highlight that we have seen the last 3 years that this position of the national focal point, the national convener, has been institutionalized, because if I'm not mistaken, the last 3 years we have seen at least 1/3 of the conveners changing, which it means that when a convener is changing position, when it's getting retired, when we have a new government, this is now under the list of the government as a to-do list. And we have seen also maybe around 20% of the pathways been updated, be renewed, been costed, and a lot of this has happened with a small amount of money relatively to what we see sometimes from very big investments. And I think that this is a proof of the leverage that the food system as approach it has, and also a kind of proof that the food system's nexus is one that brings together environment, social, economic issues, and it makes sense for practical intervention at the country level. We were 1 week ago in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, trying to have a first discussion with the government about the event there at the end of July, and we do get this message from them. And I think we need to respond to them, because they do say that the food systems make sense as a nexus for all the SDG for the SDGs transitions. And they do mention even sometimes funding that we are not aware of, and it has been leveraged, with some small initial funding from the UN. So very, very, a very, very, very good architecture, if I can say it like this, to make sure that the investments will be multiplied and the investments will create something much bigger. Over from me, Lisa.
Excellent, excellent, Stefanos. No, really want to appreciate that focus on country level leadership and momentum. I think you're really highlighting the momentum that we, the development system, are coming in behind. And I think that's very, very exciting as we look ahead to July and we look ahead to how we can all really raise the bar and the conversation and the attention to this as we anticipate the stock take in just a few months. So colleagues, last call for any other questions, reactions, comments. We're thrilled that we were able to do this with you, and we've had such great attendance and great feedback for this event that we'd like to start doing them monthly on all of the efforts of the Joint SDG Fund. So we're going to be exploring, perhaps a showcase of digital or our work on the Global Accelerator in March. So please stand by, tell your friends, tell your colleagues that this will be a regular, easy to deliver and to open up the conversation and perhaps learn a few things. If any of you have specific questions on the stock take or are already looking at your delegations, I know in speaking to the RC in Phnom Penh last night, it sounded as if the Prime Minister had confirmed his participation to the FFD, but also to the stock take. So we have a lot of exciting government leadership and momentum around some of the global fora that are ahead of us this year. So again, we're really keen to, if you do have a senior level delegation attending, how can we help showcase your support to the fund? That's always a piece of what we'd like to offer. Is there a space you'd like to be on, a side event or on a panel, et cetera, et cetera? So please consider the Joint SDG Fund a home for your delegations at any of these events, and how we can help also appreciate and showcase your leadership. So with that, thank you again for participating, possibly for listening to the recording, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Much appreciation, Ophelie, Ned, all the colleagues behind the scenes, Stefanos. All the best.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Stay well.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.